her species mates to survive, and I was chosen. The crash landing had been spectacular even by Elias Reeves's standards. 20 years as an interstellar pilot hadn't prepared him for the atmosphere of Nihilith. Thin in some places, dense as molasses in others. What remained of his ship lay scattered across a lavender field, pieces glinting under the light of twin moons. "Dispatch, this is Explorer 7, he rasped into his helmet comm. "Tasting copper. Planetary entry failed. Ship compromised. Requesting immediate extraction." Only static answered. Elias unclipped himself from the pilot's chair and winced as pain lanced through his ribs. The life support systems blinked erratically on what remained of the control panel. 12 hours of oxygen, maybe less, no one's coming, a melodic voice said from behind him. Elias spun, hand flying to his side where a standard-issue blaster should have been. Instead, his fingers found empty air. Through the cracked viewport stood a figure bathed in moonlight, tall and lithe. "Who are you?" Elias demanded, voice steadier than he felt. The figure stepped closer and Elias caught his breath. She, for she appeared distinctly female, had skin that glowed a soft purple pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Her features were almost human. High cheekbones, full lips, eyes like twilight. But there was an otherness to her, a luminescence that no human possessed. "I am Lyria," she said, her voice like wind through crystal. "The last of the Nihilithians." She moved with fluid grace, examining his wrecked ship with curious eyes. "Your signal beacon called to me. No one has come to our world in many cycles. Called to you? I was surveying the outer rim. I didn't—" Elias coughed, a spasm that left him doubled over. Lyria approached without fear, placing a cool hand against his forehead. Where their skin touched, a strange warmth spread through him, easing his pain. "You're injured," she observed. "Come. This vessel will not protect you when night fully descends." Against better judgment, Elias followed her from the wreckage. The landscape of Nihilith stretched before them, rolling hills covered in vegetation that seemed to shimmer and shift colors with each step. Above them, stars burned with an intensity he'd never witnessed even in deep space. "This planet is dying," Lyria said as they walked. "As am I. What happened?" Her luminescence dimmed slightly. "We were once many. Our cities spanned this world, reaching toward the stars. Then the fading began. One by one my people dimmed, their light extinguishing. They reached a structure that seemed grown rather than built, walls curving organically like the inside of a shell. Inside, bioluminescent patterns danced across the ceiling, responding to Lyria's presence. "Why are you the only one left?" Elias asked, removing his helmet as internal sensors confirmed breathable atmosphere. Lyria's gaze met his, unnervingly direct. "Because I waited. My kind cannot survive alone. We require bonding, a fusion of life forces to sustain our light." "Fusion?" Elias felt a tingle of alarm. "I don't understand." She stepped closer, and he noticed how the light beneath her skin pulsed stronger. "Your species would call it companionship, perhaps. Or intimacy. We share energy, emotions. Life itself." Heat radiated from her like a star in proximity, not unpleasant but intense. Elias found himself unable to look away from her eyes, which held both ancient wisdom and desperate hope. "Your arrival is not coincidence." "Elias Reeves," she whispered, his name transforming in her accent into something almost musical. "The universe has patterns we cannot always see." "My ship," he began, "cannot be repaired," she finished gently. "Not by you alone. Not in time." Elias checked his wrist display. Oxygen reserves depleting, core temperature dropping. Without help, he wouldn't survive the night. "What are you suggesting?" he asked, though something in him already knew. Lyria's hands glowed brighter as she raised them, hovering inches from his face. "That perhaps we were meant to save each other. Your life force is strong, vibrant. Mine is fading but holds knowledge of this world. How to survive. How to communicate beyond its atmosphere." "A symbiotic relationship," Elias murmured, scientist's mind working despite his situation. "More," she corrected, her voice trembling slightly. "A bond. I offer you survival. In return, I keep your light from going out," he finished. For the first time she smiled and the entire room brightened. "Will you consent?" Outside, the second moon rose fully, casting the room in silver-purple light. Elias thought of Earth, so distant now, of protocol regulations, everything his training had taught him. Then he looked at Lyria, the last of her kind. reaching across an impossible gulf of evolution and stars to connect. Yes, he said simply, and took her outstretched hand, where their fingers intertwined. Light sparked between them, neither human nor Nilithian, but something entirely new. Dr. Talia Chen pressed her forehead against the reinforced glass of the submersible, watching bioluminescent creatures dart through the midnight waters. After 3 weeks in the underwater research station Marusian, she still couldn't believe she'd volunteered for this mission. Approaching primary ventilation hub, she spoke into her recorder. Preliminary scans indicate organized structures consistent with sentient design rather than natural formation. The submersible glided through a massive coral archway, revealing a sprawling city of spiraling shells and pulsating membranes. Lights in blues and greens throbbed in patterns too regular to be random. A language, perhaps, or a navigational system. Incredible, Talia whispered. Her aquatic xenobiology specialty hadn't prepared her for this level of complexity. A shadow passed overhead, and she glanced up to see a figure swimming alongside her vessel. Humanoid, but clearly not human. The being had gills fluttering at the neck and webbed appendages that propelled it effortlessly through water. Its skin shimmered with an internal light that shifted colors like an aurora. The figure gestured toward a docking structure ahead. Talia hesitated only briefly before guiding the submersible forward. Her mission was first contact after all. The airlock cycled with surprising efficiency. When the inner door opened, Talia stepped into a chamber where water and air seemed to coexist in impossible harmony, neither quite liquid nor gas, but something in between that allowed her to breathe while maintaining pressure. "Welcome, terrestrial one," came a voice like water over stones. "I am Navik, sentinel of the outer rings." He stood before her, tall and graceful. Up close, Talia could see his skin was predominantly teal with patterns of violet swirling beneath. His eyes were large, iridescent, without pupils but somehow expressive. "Dr. Talia Chen," she responded, fighting the urge to reach for scientific instruments. "From Earth." "Earth," Navik repeated, the word bubbling strangely from his lips. "The dry world. We have stories of it." He led her through corridors that seemed alive, walls contracting and expanding like breathing lungs. Other beings moved around them, some acknowledging Talia with curious glances, others continuing their activities with deliberate indifference. "Your colony is remarkable," Talia said. "Our scans didn't detect technology, but clearly your civilization is advanced." Navik's bioluminescence dimmed slightly. "We were once across many oceans, many worlds. Now we are few, contained to this region only. What happened?" They entered a central chamber where a massive coral structure pulsed with light. Navik placed a webbed hand against it, and the lights responded, forming complex patterns. "Fading," he said simply. "Our essence requires emotional connection, psychic resonance with others. Without it we dim, lose consciousness, eventually dissolve back into the waters." Talia's scientific mind raced. A form of symbiotic evolution? Fascinating. "On Earth, some species—" "Not like Earth," Navik interrupted, suddenly closer. "More profound. Without new connections, new emotional bonds, we cannot regenerate our light. Each cycle, fewer of us remain." The water around them seemed to grow warmer, vibrating with unseen energy. Other Marusians had entered the chamber, forming a loose circle around them. "Why are you telling me this?" Talia asked, though something in her already suspected. Navik's eyes shifted to a deeper violet. "You were not chosen randomly, Talia Chen. Your vessel was permitted entry because you possess something rare, a capacity for empathic resonance beyond most of your kind." The coral structure pulsed brighter, casting Talia's shadow across the living floor. "You've been monitoring me?" "Feeling you," Navik corrected. "Your emotions create ripples in the water." "Echoes we recognize." One of the other Marusians approached, extending something that resembled a living pearl, glowing softly. "The renewal requires connection," Navik explained, his voice dropping to an intimate tone that sent unexpected shivers through Talia. "I have selected you as my counterpart." The water around them began to pulse in rhythm with the lights on Navik's skin. Talia felt a strange resonance building, as if the very molecules between them were aligning. "This isn't what I came here for," she said, yet found herself unable to step away. "My mission is scientific observation." Navik's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Is science not about discovery?" About finding unexpected truths? He circled her slowly, the water glowing around his form. For the first time, Talia noticed how the light patterns on his skin formed intricate designs, beautiful and hypnotic. The ritual harms neither participant, he assured her. It creates a bond, temporary or lasting as the participants choose. The other Marusians had begun a humming that vibrated through the water, through Talia's very bones. What happens if I refuse? She asked, scientist skepticism warring with an undeniable curiosity. Navik's expression grew solemn. I fade. Eventually. And your return to the surface becomes difficult. Not quite a threat, but close enough to make Talia's heart race. Yet as she looked at Navik, at the genuine hope in his strange eyes, she realized her fear wasn't of him, but of the unknown he represented. What would I need to do? She asked finally. The ocean itself seemed to pulse with their heartbeats as Navik reached for her hand, his skin cool against hers, yet somehow igniting warmth wherever they touched. Simply feel, he whispered. The water knows the rest. Caden Frost had survived 3 Martian dust storms, a Jupiter orbital malfunction, and even the infamous Titan methane pools. But nothing had prepared him for the bone-deep cold of Crystallis. The ice moon's atmosphere howled around his environmental suit as he trudged through knee-deep snow, visibility reduced to mere meters. His rover had succumbed to the extreme temperatures 10 kilometers back, forcing him to continue on foot toward the emergency shelter his scanners promised lay ahead. This is Explorer Caden Frost, he transmitted through chattering teeth. Day 15 on Crystallis. Rover disabled. Proceeding to coordinates 72.4 north, 118.9 east on foot. Temperature dropping. If anyone receives this... He stopped as his comm crackled and died, frost forming over the microphone. Perfect. Cut off. Freezing and alone on the most inhospitable moon in the sector. Caden checked his suit's temperature gauge. Negative 87 Celsius and falling. He had perhaps an hour before hypothermia set in. The storm intensified, ice crystals slicing against his faceplate. Through the swirling white, he spotted a dark opening in the looming ice wall ahead. A cave, or at least shelter from the howling gale. Stumbling forward, Caden reached the entrance and collapsed inside. The relative stillness was jarring after hours in the storm. He activated his suit's emergency beacon, though he harbored no illusions about rescue chances this far from established routes. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, Caden realized he wasn't in a simple cave. The walls sparkled with embedded crystals, refracting his headlamp in dazzling patterns. More striking, the temperature inside was markedly higher, still freezing but survivable. "Hello, traveler," came a voice like ice chimes in wind. Caden spun around, hand flying to his emergency weapon. Against the far wall stood a figure that at first glance appeared to be a statue, humanoid but clearly not human. Her skin was translucent with a crystalline quality that caught and refracted light. Beneath this outer layer, a soft purple glow pulsed rhythmically. "You're not hallucinating," she said, stepping forward with a grace that belied her seemingly solid form, though many before you believed so at first. What are you?" Caden managed, the scientist in him overwhelming fear. "I am Seren," she replied, last of the crystalline collective on this moon. She moved closer, and Caden noticed how frost melted in a radius around her. Despite her ice-like appearance, she radiated warmth. "You're generating heat," he observed, the explorer in him now fully engaged. Seren nodded, crystal facets in her face catching light. "It is our life energy, or what remains of it." She gestured around the cave. "This was once a thriving outpost. We harmonized with the crystals, drawing energy from the core, converting it to heat and light." "What happened to the others?" Caden asked, slowly removing his helmet as readings confirmed breathable atmosphere. Serene's inner light dimmed slightly. "The core began cooling centuries ago. Without sufficient energy, my kind have freeze. Become one with the crystals permanently." She touched a formation on the wall, and Caden saw with a shock that it resembled a face, another of her kind, forever preserved in the ice. "I've survived by conserving energy," she continued. "But I am fading. Each cycle, my warmth diminishes." Outside, the storm intensified. Caden's suit beeped a warning. External temperature now negative 103. No human could survive that, even with his advanced gear. We appear to share a predicament, he said wryly. I can't leave, and you're running out of energy. For the first time, Seren smiled, an expression that sent ripples of light across her crystalline features. Perhaps the universe has a pattern after all. She approached until she stood directly before him. Up close, Caden could see that what he'd taken for solid crystal was actually thousands of tiny facets in constant, subtle motion. Her eyes were deep violet, pupilless but somehow conveying both ancient wisdom and curiosity. My kind survives through energy bonding, she explained, sharing and amplifying our internal heat. Like thermal coupling? Caden asked, the scientist in him intrigued despite his situation. Similar, but more complete. We exchange not just heat but life essence itself. Caden felt a strange sensation as she moved closer. The air between them seemed to vibrate, molecules aligning and reacting to their proximity. I've studied xenobiology, he said, but I've never encountered a species that... Most beings we've encountered find it too intimate, Seren interrupted, her voice softer now. The bonding connects on multiple levels. Physical, yes, but also mental. Perhaps even what humans call spiritual. She extended a crystalline hand, hovering inches from his chest. Where it neared, Caden felt unexpected warmth seeping through his suit. You feel it already, she observed. The resonance between us, and he did. A strange rhythmic pulsing that seemed to match the glow within her. Against all scientific understanding, he felt drawn to her, as if some fundamental force recognized something shared between entirely different evolutionary paths. What would this bonding mean? He asked, voice rougher than intended. For both of us? Frost on the cave walls began melting around them, water droplets catching light like suspended stars. For me, survival. For you, she paused, considering, warmth enough to endure until the storm passes. And perhaps something neither of us has known before, a connection across the void. For the first time in his years of exploration, Caden Frost felt he stood at the threshold of a truly alien experience, not just observing the unknown, but becoming part of it. I consent, he said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. Serene's inner light brightened as she placed her palm against his chest. For a moment nothing happened. Then heat bloomed between them, intense but not burning. Ice crystals in the air melted instantly, forming a perfect sphere of warmth that expanded outward. And for the first time since landing on this frozen moon, Caden felt not just physically warm, but something deeper, a fusion of human heat and alien light, desire mixed with destiny. Dr. Julian Martinez stared at the genome sequence scrolling across his lab screen, the familiar pattern of humanity's demise. 3 years since the sterility crisis began, and Earth's population had stopped growing entirely. No new births had been recorded in the last 8 months. Computer run simulation 447B again, he said, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. The holographic projection showed the same result. Human DNA degrading under the influence of the cosmic radiation that had bathed Earth after the solar flare. The simulation cannot produce different results without different input, came a melodic voice from the doorway. Julian turned to see Alara observing him. Her violet skin seemed to absorb the harsh laboratory lights, softening them. As Earth's first extraterrestrial diplomatic scientist, she had volunteered to help with the sterility crisis 6 months ago. Her species, the Zinthari, had faced similar challenges centuries before. I know, Julian sighed, but there has to be something we're missing. Alara moved to stand beside him, her movements graceful despite Earth's gravity being stronger than her homeworld's. She studied the display, head tilted slightly. Your species approaches problems linearly, she observed, not unkindly. Sometimes solutions require convergence. Julian had grown accustomed to her oblique way of speaking, part of the cultural difference between their worlds. What he hadn't grown accustomed to was her proximity, the subtle floral scent that emanated from her skin, the way her bioluminescence intensified when she concentrated. We've tried convergent thinking, he replied. Combined approaches from every field. Radiation therapy, genetic splicing, synthetic wombs. Alara's luminescent patterns shifted, indicating what Julian had learned was thoughtful consideration. Not convergence of techniques, she clarified. Convergence of beings. She touched the display, manipulating the hologram with delicate fingers. The human DNA strand rotated, then split apart. My people faced extinction 300 years ago, she said quietly. Our genetic structure was unraveling much like yours. You never told me how you solved it, Julian realized, turning to face her. Alara's violet eyes met his, unnervingly direct. Because the solution requires more than scientific explanation. It required demonstration. She touched another control, and a new DNA strand appeared beside the human one, similar in basic structure but with key differences, notably in the telomere regions. Xanthari DNA, Julian recognized. Yes, our solution was not to repair our own genetics, but to create a fusion, a new code that combined stability from compatible species. Julian's scientific mind raced ahead. You're suggesting xenogenetic hybridization? But the ethical committees would never. Not permanent hybridization, Alara interrupted. Temporary genetic bonding that allows damaged sections to rebuild using the partner species as a template. The laboratory lights dimmed suddenly, automatic systems responding to the late hour. In the softer illumination, Alara's skin glowed more prominently, casting a gentle purple light between them. In theory, it's possible, Julian admitted, but the process would require cellular intimacy beyond anything we've attempted with non-terrestrial species. Alara stepped closer. Theory becomes practice through action, Dr. Martinez. Her formal use of his title contrasted with the intensity of her gaze. When my people faced extinction, our scientists became more than researchers. They became participants. Understanding dawned slowly. You're volunteering, Julian said. As a genetic template. Yes, but why me? There are specialists in xenogenetics who... Your genetic profile, she interrupted gently, shows unusual compatibility with Xanthari patterns. I've been analyzing potential matches since arriving. You are optimal. The sterile laboratory suddenly felt intimate, charged with something beyond scientific inquiry. Julian had dedicated his life to saving humanity, working endless hours in isolation. He'd never expected salvation might require connection rather than solitude. What exactly would this process involve? He asked, scientist's caution warring with a deeper curiosity. Alara's luminescence pulsed slightly faster. The initial bonding requires physical proximity. The exchange happens at a cellular level but is facilitated by what your people might call intimacy. You mean, yes. Her directness was both disarming and strangely compelling. But it is more than physical. Our minds, our energy patterns must align. The exchange is as much emotional as biological. Under the sterile lights that flickered softly, she reached out, her voice low, not just asking for survival, but connection. I would not suggest this if there were alternatives, Julian, but sometimes salvation requires vulnerability. Julian thought of the billions depending on a solution, of the children who would never be born without intervention. Then he looked at Alara. Alien, yes, but in this moment, more present and real than any human he'd worked with during the crisis. If we succeed, he said, voice steady despite his racing heart. What happens after? Alara's lips curved slightly. Science tells us what we can do. Courage determines what we will do. She extended her hand, palm up, glowing softly in invitation. What began as science turned into something powerfully human as Julian placed his hand in hers, feeling an unexpected surge of warmth where their skin touched. The first connection in a process that might save both their kinds. Maya Williams adjusted her atmospheric filter as the second sun of Anthea rose, bathing the already crimson forest in deeper scarlet light. 6 weeks into her botanical research expedition, and the planet still took her breath away. Massive trees with translucent leaves stretched hundreds of meters skyward, their crystalline trunks refracting light in hypnotic patterns. Sample 247 shows remarkable adaptive properties, she recorded, examining a flower that opened and closed in response to her proximity rather than light. Cellular structure suggests consciousness at the organelle level, unlike anything on Earth. A rustle of movement caught her attention. Through the ruby-tinted underbrush stepped a figure Maya had glimpsed occasionally. During her stay, but never approached, one of the indigenous sentients who called themselves the Antheans. He stood taller than a human, his skin a deep purple that seemed to harmonize with the red foliage around him. Most striking were the vine-like appendages that grew from his shoulders and back, moving independently like living tent drills. His eyes entirely black, but with pinpoints of light like distant stars. regarded her with unmistakable intelligence. "You study our forest with great care," he said, his voice resonant and melodic despite speaking her language. "Few visitors show such reverence." Maya lowered her sample collection tool slowly. "Your world is extraordinary. I'm Maya Williams, botanist from Earth." "I am Orion," he replied, "forest keeper of the Eastern Realm." His tendrils shifted, some extending toward nearby plants which responded by unfurling or producing sudden blooms. Maya realized with amazement that he was communicating with them. "The forest speaks of you," Orion continued. "It feels your curiosity, your wonder. These are rare emotions from outsiders who typically bring only desire for resources." Maya flushed with unexpected pleasure at the compliment. "I believe in studying ecosystems intact, not exploiting them. Your forest seems to operate as a single interconnected organism." Orion's expression shifted to something like approval. "You understand more than most. Yes, all life here shares consciousness through the root systems. Even we Anthians are not separate but connected through the veil." He gestured at the vine-like appendages on his back. "These are our physical connection to the greater mind of Anthea." As they walked deeper into the forest, Orion explained how his species had evolved alongside the plant life, developing a symbiotic relationship thousands of years ago. But recently something had changed. "The severance began 3 generations ago," he said, his voice growing solemn. "Fewer of our young develop proper connective vines. Without them, they cannot join the forest consciousness, cannot truly live as Antheans." They reached a clearing where the ground itself pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Above them, the dual suns created an effect like blood-red water rippling across the canopy. "My kind requires connection, not just to the forest, but to other conscious beings," Orion explained. "Once each cycle of suns, we must renew our bonds through the life-sharing." Maya's scientific curiosity piqued. "A reproduction cycle?" "More than reproduction. A renewal of energy patterns of consciousness itself." His tendrils moved more animatedly. "Without it, both the individual and their connection to the forest fades." Maya realized he was leading her toward an ancient tree at the center of the clearing, its trunk wide enough that 20 humans could not have encircled it. The bark pulsed with patterns that reminded her of neural networks. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, though something in her already sensed the answer. Orion's eyes seemed to burn more intensely. "The forest has chosen you, Maya Williams. It senses in you a pattern compatible with our own, a consciousness that could strengthen our fading connections." The forest floor beneath them began to glow more brightly, forming intricate spirals that centered on where they stood. Tiny flowers burst open around Maya's feet, releasing pollen that sparkled in the red sunlight. "You want me to participate in this life-sharing?" Maya asked, heart racing with both scientific fascination and something more primal, a recognition of standing at the threshold of something profound. "I would not ask if there were another way," Orion said, his voice gentler now. "But my connection grows weaker with each cycle. And the forest, it calls to you. Listen." Maya closed her eyes and felt, rather than heard, a humming vibration, almost like distant voices singing in harmony. It resonated through her body, oddly familiar despite its alienness. "What would happen?" she whispered. "To me? To you?" Orion's tendrils moved toward her, not touching but hovering inches away. Where they neared, Maya felt a strange warmth on her skin. "Our energies would intertwine," he explained. "Your consciousness would touch the forests briefly. What is separate would become connected. What is unknown would become known. And after, you remain yourself but changed, as all are changed by true connection. And I would regain full harmony with the forest mind. My people would have hope that outsiders can help us restore what we are losing." Around them, petals began to open, air glowing as if the world itself approved of their conversation. Maya thought of Earth, of the sterile laboratories and concrete cities. She'd come to Anthea seeking new botanical knowledge, but found herself offered something far more profound, a chance to experience connection on a level humans had only theorized about. "Yes," she said finally, the scientist and the woman in her reaching the same conclusion. "I consent to your life-sharing." Orion's eyes widened slightly as if he hadn't expected her agreement. Then his expression softened, and for the first time, Maya saw him smile, revealing not teeth but small structures like crystalline filaments that caught the red sunlight. "Then let us begin," he said, extending his hands toward her. As Maya stepped forward, The forest itself seemed to respond, petals opening, air glowing with particles that swirled around them like conscious dust. When their hands met, Maya gasped at the immediate sensation, not just touch, but a flood of impressions, emotions, memories not her own. The boundary between herself and the forest, between human and Anthean, blurred into something new yet ancient, foreign yet familiar. For a moment, Maya Williams experienced consciousness as the forest did. Every leaf, every root, every creature connected in a web of awareness that stretched across the entire planet. She felt Orion's presence not as separate but as a bright note in a universal symphony. When the connection finally ebbed, Maya found herself standing with her forehead pressed against Orion's, both of them breathing in perfect synchrony. "The forest accepts you," he whispered, wonder in his voice. "You are the first outsider it has ever embraced." Maya felt tears on her cheeks but also a smile on her lips. Something fundamental had shifted inside her, not replacing her humanity but expanding it, showing her possibilities beyond individual consciousness. "I understand now," she said softly. "We're not meant to be islands. Not your kind, not mine." Around them, the forest of red suns pulsed with renewed vigor, celebrating a connection that bridged worlds, species, and the vast emptiness between stars. A reminder that across the universe, the desire to bond, to share, to connect was perhaps the most powerful force of all. Epilogue: bonds beyond stars on 5 different worlds, across vast distances of space and time. Connections formed that defied the cold equations of probability. Elias and Lyria on the dying world of Nilith, their energies forming something entirely new. Talia and Navik beneath alien oceans, finding resonance across different evolutionary paths. Caden and Siren on a frozen moon, creating warmth from the fusion of unlike beings. Julian and Alara in a sterile laboratory, turning science into salvation. Maya and Orion in a crimson forest, bridging consciousness itself. Different species, different challenges, but one universal truth emerged. Life finds ways to connect, to bond, to reach across the void. Where isolation threatened extinction, union offered renewal. Where difference seemed insurmountable, complementary energies created harmony. And in each case, what began as necessity blossomed into something more profound. A reminder that throughout the cosmos, beings might look to the stars and find not just wonder but kinship. For perhaps the greatest discovery in all of space exploration wasn't alien technology or exotic resources, but the recognition that the desire to join with another, whether through energy, consciousness, or heart, transcends the boundaries of species, planets, and stars. In this vast universe of infinite possibility, the most powerful force remained the simplest: connection.